Healing minds, inspiring voices, living truth, making choices. This is your space. Just be you, authentically peculiar with Marcia. Welcome to a space where healing is real, where your voice matters and your truth is enough. With authentically peculiar. Season 5, the year of expansion, healing deeper, living louder, stepping fully into who you are. Authentically peculiar with Marcia.
Welcome back to Authentically Peculiar with Marcia. I am so excited about our guest today. We met and had a ball in Canada last October as we both were gaining our certification as international keynote speakers and motivators across the globe. Today, I have the pleasure of having Dr. LaToria Whitehead, who is the founder and chief executive officer of LS Whitehead Group, LLC. Her firm has a strategic vision and advances environmental and climate justice through equity-centered public policy and sustainability strategies. She is a political scientist and nationally recognized leader in environmental justice and health equity. Dr. Whitehead brings more than 20 years of experience across federal government, academia, and mission-driven organizations, including the city of Atlanta recently, and we're going to get into that. She served nearly 2 decades at the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, for everybody that don't want to listen to all of that, where she held a senior public health leadership role within the National Center for Environmental Health and served as an environmental justice officer. She later served in an interim role at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Office of Assistant Secretary for Health, a senior advisor for environmental justice and health equity. She is a contributor to the establishment of the agency's first Office of Environmental Justice. But in addition to all of that greatness and her federal service, Dr. Whitehead also served for more than 13 years as an adjunct professor of political science at Spelman College. She also serves as a deputy editor of the academic journal Environmental Justice. Her scholarship and practice focus on intersection of environmental justice, public policy, and structural inequities, translating research into actionable strategies. I typically don't read somebody's bio line by line, but to me, it was so important to introduce Dr. Whitehead to you all in such a professional manner, simply because I don't know how many Black women are in that field. So I'm certain that she is busting open doors in that field and in that industry. So welcome aboard, Dr. Whitehead. Thank you for your yes for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Marcia, for having me. I'm honored and humbled to be here. Thank you so much. And thank you for what you do.
You're so very welcome. Well, let's get started. I had a plethora of questions that I wanted to ask us. There's so much going on. First, I would like to acknowledge that April is Earth Day month. We're celebrating the Earth. We have our first African American male piloting Artemis headed to beyond the moon. So that's exciting for this Earth Day month, as well as so many environmental changes going on. What got you interested in discussing the environment and the impact that it has on communities?
I started off really my career in health and the environment in Duval County in Jacksonville, Florida. That's where I'm
Mm,
originally. And
okay.
so my bachelor's is in health science. And so a couple of years after I got my degree, I worked for a health department,
Mm-hmm.
and the director there for environmental health, he introduced me to his term called environmental justice. He said, I think you'd be interested. And so, he said it so casually, and I read about it, and
Mm-hmm.
I really couldn't wrap my head around it. I was very
Okay.
naive to thinking, like, why is this happening to people of color? Why is this happening to
Mm,
marginalized, vulnerable populations, low income populations? And I started to relate because I am this population. Me and my
Yeah,
mom and family, we live in these populations,
right.
not really connecting all the dots. And so the more I read, the more I just became just fascinated with it, but appalled at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So really started to just read and read and teach myself these things. So it started back then. And then, moving further, when I moved to Atlanta, I, of course, went further to get my master's degree and, my PhD, and then, working in, atmosphere like such as CDC and teaching at Spelman College, graduating from HBCU, Clark Atlanta, the illustrious Clark Atlanta University.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, so that's what it started back then. So it really wasn't even a plan for
Oh,
me
okay.
to get thing around environmental justice. It just kind of fell on to me.
Well, we needed your voice. I think about what's happening in Memphis, Tennessee, which is where I grew up, and the data centers and a lot of the environmental things that's going on that they're now discovering has caused cancer and people in the community, even at a young age. Can you talk a little bit about how environmental structures are, I don't want to say targeting Black communities, but targeting Black communities because no different from the Tuskegee syphilis uh, research, I believe that Black communities are targeted so that they can see how we handle things. So tell me about that perspective of environmental justice.
Thank you, Marcia. That's a great great insight, great question. So first of all, environmental justice is a principle. It's a framework
Okay.
that lies on the principle that everyone has the right to live in a healthy environment, that
Yeah.
no one should bear more than their share of environmental hazards. That means
Mm-hmm.
if I'm drinking bad water on the other side of town, you probably should be drinking the same bad water. If I'm
Mm-hmm.
breathing out bad air, you should too. And not that anyone should have to, be in that despair of what we call environmental hazards, environmental toxics, but environmental injustice is where there's a population that's bearing more than their share of these
Mm-hmm.
environmental hazards because of my race, ethnicity, because of where my zip code, where I live at, race, ethnicity, where I live at, the areas that are racially residentially segregated, these historical structural pieces that are built on structural racism. So what you are saying,
Mm-hmm.
other low income populations, marginalized populations, they are bearing more than their share of environmental hazards because of who I am and where I live. That is environmental injustice. Environmental
Mm-hmm.
justice is where we can attain what I initially described as, we are all living in a healthy environment, and whatever that bearing is, we're all equal to that. Many people think that environment is free to all. Well, the environment is free to all, but it doesn't impact us the same way. And so you
Mm-hmm.
have, to your point, you have these populations that are sitting in, certain neighborhoods that are bearing more than their share of these environmental hazards because you have certain companies, industries, you have policies and regulations where they feel that these are populations that are politically powerless. So
Mm-hmm.
because you are a Black community, because you are living in an low income population, because we are going to plant these things, we are going to plant these different pieces into your community because we don't expect any pushback. We don't
Mm-hmm.
expect that we're able to, when I say we, I am saying, certain industries, certain companies, and also the way environmental regulations can just lay and it comes to a gridlock, a stop when it's time to really enforce. And so this is what happens when we talk about environmental injustice. And it is, as you laid out, really, it is historical. It is
Mm-hmm.
historical.
Mm-hmm.
So many people think that the environment is just, something that's pristine and out there and it doesn't affect us. Environment is a part of you. As soon as you walk out your door, you become the environment because you open your mouth,
Exactly.
you breathe. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's a piece of the environment that's just, it's not just inside of your air, your pollution, and all those things, but there's also your built environment. Do you have sidewalks when you walk out in your neighborhood? Do you feel safe to, walk on your sidewalks and be able to exercise? Do you have a Publix? Do you have a Whole Foods? Do you have close proximity to grocery stores, fresh foods and vegetables? Or do you have
Mm-hmm.
check cashers?
Come,
Do you have more stores when you
liquor
walk out? Do you
stores, churches.
have exactly alcohol
Mm-hmm.
out? What do you
Mm-hmm.
have? That's what we call the built environment. And so that's your
Mm-hmm.
infrastructure. That's also a part of environmental justice and injustice. So that is when we go back to these certain neighborhoods and how this historically starts and where it ends, you are right. It is historical. It is politically looking at politically powerless neighborhoods and planning these things in our neighborhoods.
And that's such a beautiful way that you laid that out because I think that the average person does not consider the impact of the environment. They think environment, okay, I walk out the door and there's pollen. Okay, I look and I see this. Okay, yeah, I gotta drive an extra 10 miles to the grocery store. But then now I'm polluting the air because I'm in a vehicle that I have to drive further to go get unhealthy products because let's face it, we know, and please share this insight if you can. Stores are listed in A through D or E order on what they're going to drop off at certain stores. So stores in the black neighborhood, we know get the CD portions of the
Mhm.
food versus the AB. Can you explain why that's chosen like that? Is it financial? Is it political? What creates that type of situation besides systemic racism?
There's an underinvestment in certain communities. There's a
Mm-hmm.
disinvestment in specific communities, right?
Mm,
And so and that's this structural inequity of not it this there's when we go into your infrastructure that's also a part of the environment. So if I'm in a low income neighborhood and I'm going down the street to the grocery store and I'm paying $10 for apples, but if I go over to I'm just gonna say Alpharetta because I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, right? And
mm-hmm.
Alpharetta most Alpharettas, as you know, is a nice neighborhood.
Yeah,
So if I'm living in a specific neighborhood and I go down the street and I'm paying $10 for apples, but I go to Alpharetta and they're paying $3 for apples, and most of the people in those neighborhoods are making more realistically than in my neighborhood, that doesn't even equate. That doesn't even make sense.
right.
But we go to when we look at underserved neighborhoods,
Mm,
these communities are not, and these are the same populations that are not being served. There's a disinvestment in that. So you
mm,
have companies that don't believe that this is a certain population that they're at risk. They are not going to eat, drink, do these things. They're not going to go to Whole Foods or what have you. The insurance may cost us more if you are
mm-hmm,
placed in this, if we put ourselves in this neighborhood. So we're going to drive the cost up in this neighborhood, and in the meantime we're not going to invest in that neighborhood. So when
mm-hmm,
we go back historically with these neighborhoods that are still today racially, residentially segregated off,
mm-hmm,
that was created on purpose. That is not by accident. And
mm-hmm,
so they are still residentially segregated off. Those places are still what you're describing is a disinvestment, underinvestment, and it
mm.
all so it's a domino effect.
That makes so much sense. I know I live in Henry County, and for years at one point, we were fighting to get a Trader Joe's here because we were getting tired of traveling so far to go to Trader Joe's. And they said, no, you all don't eat meat, our requirements. It's like, okay, let's look at the requirements. We have
Mm-hmm.
a medium income of $78,000. Median
hmm
income.
hmm
Black female led households where mama's gonna always try to choose the best for the most part for their children. And you
hmm
telling me we don't have what it takes to get a Trader Joe's? So guess what? We got a Sprouts. And Sprouts has been blowing up in the community.
hmm
Now Trader Joe's wants to buy in. We don't want you as an afterthought.
Right.
And so when you say the underinvestment, that makes so much sense because of our black skin. You feel like we're not worth the investment, which is how society unfortunately looks at black communities. How do you help change when you're in these sessions and giving these strategies to even corporations? How do you help change that mindset to let them understand that not only are we human, but we spend money and we want a
Oh
healthy
yeah.
environment? Help me to understand how you go about uh, challenging their belief and then helping them to change as much as possible.
So, there is education and then there's also buy-in, right? So people could know whatever you want them to know, but if there's no buy-in for them and how it's going to
Mm,
help them and their company, frankly, they don't care what color you are, they're not going to buy into it, right? And that is
mm,
this is just real life. And so, in my career, I've had the just a blessing to be able to work in different segments of
mhm,
this world of health, this world of the environment, this world of environmental justice. I worked for the federal government for 18 and a half years. And
mhm,
I worked for the government for 2 in that sense, we were able to, you are distributing money to the states to do specific things. In that world, I was able to bring environmental justice into my specific department and able to say, hey, this is what's going on. We need to partner with community-based organizations because they are the mouthpiece for this
mhm,
community.
mhm, mhm,
Partnering with a community leader, it doesn't matter if I'm walking through this community and I'm looking like them, I'm still working for the federal government. There's a distrust there for good reason, historically. And so, some of the things that we did when I worked for the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is when we oversaw state programs, we had these state programs partner with CBOs, with community organizations, and they were the mouthpiece. I was able to educate the community leader to say, hey, these moms need to be testing their children for lead. This is what's happening here.
mm,
But so they're the mouthpiece. I'm getting the message out through community-based organizations and academia. I've been at Spelman College for over 13 years now. I teach environmental justice, environmental politics, and policy, and I teach legislative process. And so
mhm,
you are really, you're educating the next generation, and
mhm,
honing them in on there's no limit, to what you can do with this degree. You can do, all sorts of things. You can be an educator, you can be a lawyer, you can be a teacher, you can hey, be a podcast leader in what you do, getting that message out in that sense. And so they're different, I would say, Marcia, they're different compartments to this of where you are educating the community in different ways, but you're also uh, bringing out this data where the data is data driven and it
mhm.
empowers. And you can do this through media, like what we're doing right now as
Yeah.
well. I run a firm, the LS Whitehead Group. And you described it earlier in my bio. And so the LS Whitehead Group, I created that in 2011, but I just went full time on last year. And some of the things that were full time in my firm, and some of the
Mhm,
things that we do is we educate people. We do assessments. We educate politicians. We give them talking points as well.
mm,
And something. And so right now and where I am now in the season of my life right now, that experience from the past is now all into the Ellis Whitehead group. So I've utilized that to, do what I do right now. So it could be done in different ways. And I know things can look very just unhopeful.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
know,
Especially right
um,
now, things look unhopeful. People are um, trying to find ways to make ends meet with so much stuff that's out of their control. One of the things I
yeah,
wanted to ask you about today are the data centers. We're seeing this emergence of data centers everywhere, and they're fighting to get into, especially, I believe, black neighborhoods because they'll go in without much of a fight because they're dangling these carrots of money. What are your thoughts? Because I'm hearing things like the impact that it's going to have on water sources in the communities because of the amount of water needed to, I guess, to keep the data moving. Can you share that information with us?
Yeah, so the data centers we know are processing centers. They're building
Mm,
they're processing centers. And so with the data centers, they're going all day. So when we look
mm,
at rise artificial intelligence, AI,
mm-hmm,
when we look at streaming, we look at all this processing, they're going 24 hours a day. With that going 24 hours a day, all the time, that's taking up a lot of energy, right? And it's
mm,
also taking
mm-hmm.
need the water to cool down, those sources. You need the water to cool down the building because
Gotcha.
it's going all day. So that's where
Mm-hmm,
that water comes in. With the, electricity, it's taking up a lot of electricity. So a lot of times when you have these different buildings and industries, you have what we call, carbon dioxide coming out,
mm-hmm,
right? So
mm-hmm.
these are gases. When we look at, emissions, when we look at different gases, these are gases that go in the air. With that going in the air, of course, that brings in, more heat trappings. And then if I am in a neighborhood with a data center, of course, using all this electricity, again, you are creating more gases in the air, creating more heat as well. And then, of course, that's directly connected to climate change. That's connected to, again, marginalized populations being able to survive climate change. And my electricity bill, more than likely, is going to be higher than what it should be. So with the data centers and the water sources that you are using, again, same thing, different day. Now we're
Yeah.
saying data, 30 years, 40 years ago, whatever, you talked about toxic waste sites being placed in, these same communities, which is still happening today as well. But with
Yes.
that, again, these data centers, as what we've seen thus far, has been placed in these same communities that we're describing, where, okay, we're going to put it in these politically powerless communities, marginalized people of
Mm,
color,
mm-hmm.
income community. And so you're utilizing more sources of water to cool down that center because that process is going 24 hours a day. And of course, you're utilizing more electricity, putting out more gas in the air, more pollution, adding to climate change, connected directly to these same communities. And so, same thing, different day, and these things are being placed in those communities because uh, they are looked at as politically powerless, underserved, disadvantaged. It's an environmental injustice issue. So that's
Mm-hmm.
what I can about that, and that's what's happening. And going back to something you said earlier about advocating and helping, you know, we do have to advocate in a way where you have to call your congressman or your congresswoman and say, this is what we are fighting for. This is what we need in our community. This
Mm-hmm.
person wants to put it in again next year. This person wants to
Mm-hmm.
have an call your congressman, call your congresswoman, tell them what's happening in the community. Go to, connect with community-based organizations if you can,
Yeah.
neighborhood, because the states can create policies that are more stringent. They can't
Mm-hmm.
create policies that are less stringent than the national government when we're talking about policies, but they can create policies that are more stringent. But we have to continue to advocate for those things.
And I so appreciate you having a voice in the community about this. Can you share? I know that your group went to Atlanta with an assessment on things there. And one of the things that I'm finding, of course, Mayor Dickens isn't my mayor because I'm not in Atlanta, but I am seeing community change that is occurring, especially with uh, building spaces for the homeless and just so many different things. Can you tell us how you help to bring some insight to Atlanta on things that needs to be done to change the environment? Hopefully, it becomes a leader that other cities can model after.
Yeah, thank you so much, Marcia, for asking about that. We took such pride in that project for the city of Atlanta, Mayor Andre Dickens, Fulton County. And so basically last year, the LS Whitehead group, and I'm sorry, I want to go back just a second. What the
Okay.
LS Whitehead does is we advance what we call environmental justice,
Mm-hmm.
climate justice, health equity. We help with quality of life issues that connect directly to the environment. Let's say that.
Mm-hmm.
So that is transportation access, that is health inequities, that is poverty issues, that is environmental issues such as pollution, bad air, water, etc. We're looking at these quality of life issues that connect to the environment, that equal environmental disparity, and
Mm-hmm.
we address that in a way of that's tailored to each client. So that's what we
Mm.
do. Going back
Okay.
to, little background on how this came about. And so last year, the Office of Sustainability and Resilience and Mayor Andre Dickens, his office asked
Mm-hmm.
us to do a climate assessment, but do it from an environmental and climate justice lens. So speaking my
Mm.
language. And
Yes.
so the city of Atlanta had done something prior in prior years. I would just say probably I would just describe it as a smaller scale. And so when they wanted this done, they wanted it done from a environmental and climate justice lens. First of all, what is a climate assessment? What does that look like? And what does it look like from an EJ lens, an environmental
Mm.
justice lens? And
Mm-hmm.
so a climate assessment, you're looking at, various neighborhoods. You're looking at the city of Fulton County, and you are looking at the resilience of what we call climate change. What is your
Mm-hmm.
resilience to climate change and everything that's happening right now, on Earth? Because we know climate change does exist and it does
Yes.
have it on our quality of life.
Mm-hmm.
When we look at specific neighborhoods, what are their resilience to this? If a Katrina happened right now, Hurricane Katrina, I'm speaking of, if a Hurricane Katrina happened right now, what would your neighborhood look like? How would you
Right.
all survive the infrastructure of that? Who is there? What's the poverty level? Transportation look like? Is it built the way it needs to be? So in layman terms, that's what we're looking at. And so uh Mayor Andre Dickens wanted to have this done, have a climate assessment for Fulton County because
Okay.
they created a climate plan, the first one for the climate for the,
Mm.
and we were, honored to be able to bring these recommendations and the strategies that we provided for the first time for the city of Atlanta. So what we did was we created a climate assessment, and we did this through geospatial mapping and
Mm-hmm.
doing it from an environmental lens. Just to break that down just a little bit, we were looking at specific neighborhoods, specific zip codes, all the neighborhoods in the city of Fulton County. But we wanted to take it, my firm wanted to take it a little bit further because, as you and I have been speaking of, we've been talking about the environment. We also been talking about poverty. We also been talking about disinvestment.
Yes.
We've been talking about people of color. That's all environmental justice, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to make sure that we told the story of Atlanta, a narrative, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
happened historically in Atlanta, what's happening now, and how do you get to where you need to be? In order to do that, we created a piece in the report, the Atlanta Social, Cultural, Built, and Political Environment. And so when
Nice.
we, yes, so, and I'm going to send you the report directly.
Okay.
So when did this mapping, we looked at these pieces such as racial residential segregation, such as redlining in the 1930s when they were, we know what that is when we're looking at
Mm-hmm.
these maps and lines drawn on a map and saying, we want to make sure that Black people don't live here. We're going to put you
Mm-hmm.
over there. There is a very bad area, right? So we
Mm-hmm.
looked pieces such as racial redlining. We looked at transportation. We looked at gentrification. We looked at access to transportation. I'm sorry, I said that. We looked at food insecurity. We looked at health disparities. We looked at, your nearest hospitals, clinics, etc. We looked at all of these different pieces and then the intersection of climate hazards to help people
Mm.
understand have to do with climate. And so we put that into the report, and then we created these maps, geospatial mapping, my geospatial health scientist. And so being able to really, place these maps in certain neighborhoods, but then we have what we call these different variables. And what that means, Marcia, is we created an index, and we named it the Environmental and Climate Justice Resilience Index. And
Mm.
so
Okay.
many times the person does, when scientists do mapping, there's data that we have to look at, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
those different have to look at. So what are we going to put in there? We're going to look at your demographic, female, Black, you have health insurance, you don't have health insurance, you have children, you have asthma, you have disability, you're putting all these different components in, and you're placing them in layman terms, you're placing them in a different a space to see,
Mm.
you know, what these pieces look like when it comes to heat, when it comes to pollution, when it comes to if I am this person, right? And
Right.
so we index with all of these different variables. We did bring in variables from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. They have a social vulnerability environmental justice index. We placed our own variables in there as well. We added on. So what we wanted to do is because the Office of Sustainability and Resilience wanted to look at this from an environmental justice lens, well, we got to know as much as we need to know
Mm-hmm.
about these neighborhoods. So we'll go beyond, you know, your infrastructure of, you know, just climate, and you can look at some what we call environmental justice strategies. So we
Mm-hmm.
created this map to look at all these different variables, race, ethnicity, poverty, you know, health, asthma, you know, disability, climate pieces. I think we had probably about 27 different things that we looked at,
Wow.
and we mapped the neighborhoods. And so what we gave the mayor's office was the 10 highest risk neighborhoods for the city of Atlanta when it comes to climate. And
Mm-hmm.
of course, we had so many different maps, but on that map, we would look at this as what we call a cumulative effect. What are these compounding factors? If I am a Black female, I live in Vine City, I am 27, I have two children, I have asthma, I live below the poverty line, my hospital is whatever, 30 miles away, my grocery stores. So we looked at all these different
Right.
pieces, and we're looking at this as a cumulative compounding effect. We gave them the 10 highest risk neighborhoods and said, this is what you have. This is who you're looking at. These are your neighborhoods. These are your populations when it comes to climate resilience, not having that strength in that
Mm.
neighborhood. But I wanted to know, I kept saying, I want to know how these people look. I want to know who we're looking at. I want to know who we're looking at. So you know, we kept redesigning this index to make sure that we were very specific. So what the Office of Sustainability and Resilience has now is they have various maps
Mm-hmm.
for the city of Fulton County where they're looking at specific neighborhoods, you know, we looked at zip code level, but they're very specific. Vine City, you know, neighborhoods around Atlanta University Center, specific. We compared those 10 highest risk neighborhoods to the 10 lowest risk neighborhoods. We compared Buckhead, Tuxedo Park to your
Mm-hmm.
Vine City. Look very, 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 very different, as you and I know
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
So what this does is this provides an impetus, if you will, for the city of Atlanta, for Fulton County to say, well, look how these neighborhoods look over here versus these neighborhoods. And now what can we do about it? Now we know who to prioritize. We know how these populations look. We know how they look around not just climate, but housing, transportation, all of these different pieces. And we
Mm-hmm.
gave recommendations for their climate resilience plan that they have now. And we also gave environmental justice strategies. And so what we found was that when you asked what we found a lot. But for the purposes of the time today, the most interesting thing that we found, but it probably wouldn't surprise you and I, we put a map on the top of another map. So we looked at the 1938 how historic red line
Mm.
neighborhoods were in 1938. And then we put that another map on top of that from 2025 to look at neighborhoods in Atlanta. And we found that the out of the 10 highest risk neighborhoods, five,
Mm-hmm.
five of those
Mm-hmm.
same neighborhoods that are experiencing all those highest risks today, Marcia, that we're talking about, were still in 1938. Same neighborhoods, 2025.
And that's
Appalling.
the thing that is so frustrating because we hear black women are the most educated on the planet, which we are. I can't take that away from us. We're the most educated on the planet. But the truth is we're still not in a power-filled position to change things that were going on in 1938 to now in neighborhoods that we've tried to build up, that we've gone into. So my hope is that community leaders will actually hear this podcast, and I'm going to actually send it to the link to the mayor here in Hampton because I really want them to consider what this looks like to do an environmental study here in Hampton because there's a data center coming. We do. I live in a food desert. I have to drive. I think it's 8 miles to a Publix, 7 miles to a Walmart, and Kroger's is probably 10 miles away, you know, to try to get fresh vegetables and fruits and things of that nature. But we need to be able to identify what that looks like. I'm noticing a high pickup of gas stations that are
Yeah.
coming. Okay, well that's cool, but what are you going to do in the community? How are we creating community gardens so that people can have access to these fresh fruits and vegetables? Are we actually monitoring the levels of pollution? I'm diagnosed with asthma. I never claim asthma, but I am diagnosed with asthma and I know what those symptoms are like. And my body literally can tell from the
Mm,
environment. Oh, something not good. Okay, I gotta stay in the house today. I can wake up feeling it. I could taste it with my asthma. I can tell the difference when the atmosphere begins to shift. How do we help on a collective stage go into communities that hadn't even, I'll say it like this. Let me calm down before I make this statement. There are a lot of uneducated politicians that are running for notoriety. They're running for benefits. They're running uh, to reduce the possibility of extinction in the sense
yeah.
of being in a white base or mindset. How do we educate the community and the politicians with this wealth of knowledge on how we are going to change the community? Because I have a major concern, and I talked to you about this, and we said we weren't going to really get into this that much, but I have a major concern about this war that's going on, the impact of oil and gasoline and transportation and what it's doing as a whole. How do we help the communities to get prepared? Uh, how do we help these supposed to be money handlers understand the importance of the vitality of our communities?
Yeah, that's a great question, Marcia. And you know what? I have to say that I love what the city of Atlanta, Fulton County, Mayor Andre Dickens, the Office of Sustainability and Resilience,
Hmm.
um, with this study because it was looked at holistically, if you will.
Hmm.
I assessment, but done from an environmental climate justice lens, is looked at holistically. So that's a beginning of how their office is talking to different communities.
Hmm.
They are talking about the plan, but they're also looking at strategies around food insecurity, around other environmental justice strategies, uh, you know, all these other quality of life. I'll just say that quality of life issues that are ongoing for us. So that
Hmm.
office that mayor and his office is making sure that this is not just data driven, but it's community driven.
Yeah.
They plans where they have taken information directly from the community. What does the community want? What does it need? And they are driving what the office is driving from what the community has said to them to base out their plan. So it's data
Hmm.
driven, but it's community driven. And I
Right.
love that the Office of Sustainability and Resilience is doing that in the city of Atlanta. And so going back to your question, looking at these other pieces, man, it is a lot going on right now. We are in a political climate that is against all these things that we're talking about
Against
here.
human kindness, against
Yes,
humanity, against
yes,
life.
yes.
Mm.
It's all those things. We are here right now in this
Hmm.
political climate. However, you still have states like the city of Atlanta, cities that can go and still do the things that, like what the city of Atlanta is doing. You look at these pieces holistically. But I think that we as people, we have to make ourselves aware of
Hmm.
what's happening, how it's impacting you. People think that it's not impacting them, but just like you just laid out, my gas, how far I
Hmm.
have to drive, my asthma, all these things are impacting you.
Hmm.
And not, it's not connected to them. So they're disconnected to it. So
Yeah.
what we have to is we have to continue to use our voices, but we have to also call our politicians and say, these are the things that we need in the state. These are the things that we need in the city. You want to be in that chair again. You want to be mayor again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
These are the things that we need. How are we going to make these things happen? So we
Mm-hmm.
still, regardless of what's going on nationally right now, this is the time to push more. This is the time to
Yes,
push more. It's not the time to lay down. It's the time to push back more and still keep saying, okay, we got to keep pushing because everything, all these decisions that are being made now nationally, as you and I know, historically, they will affect us for years and years to come. All of these different
exactly.
national policies, they're going to affect us years to come. So, I would have to say that, one of the things we do at LS Whitehead Group, we do educate politicians. We do create talking points where it's come about where they have, they don't know how to vote on a certain issue because they don't know the context of the environment.
Mm-hmm.
They just
Mm-hmm.
educate, and that's okay. But it's okay to say, they've come to us and say, okay, well, what will happen if this happens in my neighborhood? We give them the
Mm-hmm.
data, we give them and how do okay, I'm going to vote this way. If you vote this way, these are your talking points. If you vote this way, these are your talking points. So we've done that too. And so, as people, some politicians don't want to know, they don't care, they want to put the money into it. And that's where advocacy comes along with us being aware and paying attention. Everybody has one of these nowadays. Now, back in the days, everybody didn't have one. We didn't
Right.
have a phone. Everybody didn't have,
Exactly.
we didn't have a,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Look at else, everything is so accessible. Instagram is so accessible. Facebook is so accessible. LinkedIn, Twitter, everything is so accessible. And so you have all these different pieces where you can have that information. Now, let me
Mm-hmm.
figure out who's my congresswoman, my congressman, what's happening there. Let me give them a call. What's happening here? Let me get with my neighborhood. Let me advocate. It can be
Mm-hmm.
done. We have to be aware. We can't sit down. We have to pay attention to these things. And then you have to push and do what little whatever that is, everything
Mm-hmm.
adds up you can in your capacity.
So what I heard you say is, here's your call to action, audience. It's time for you to use your voice. It's time for you to use your personhood and talk to these elected officials. Talk to your local, everybody is pretty much running for office this year. This is a time that we utilize the strength of our voices and our vote to make
Yeah.
sure that the right people are in off. At this point, I don't care anything about the party lines. What I care about is community. What I care about is humanship. What I care about is sustainability. I lied. I do care about party understanding because I need people to really, I'm trying not to make it a complete political statement. But what I am saying is stop voting against your best good. Stop voting
Right.
against the lies that people are telling you. Challenge
Yes.
what they're saying so that you can
Yes.
understand what your actual truth is and what you're dealing with. They gonna lie. They all lie.
Right.
And I hate that statement, the lesser of two evils. No, who's lying the most? Who's shown you that they ain't gonna do nothing for you? We
Right.
are in power and control. I don't care how many laws they are trying to pass to try to blackball people from voting and to trick you into voting for other people. You need to do your homework. Like Dr. Whitehead said, everybody got a phone. Do your
Right.
research, do your homework. It's kind of like people who go to church and never open the Bible. They just take the word from the preacher.
Right.
You could be
Right.
bamboozled into anything, into believing anything at any given time. You have to take ownership for what you want to see happen in your community. Challenge these politicians, challenge those as mayors and governors and council people. Even the council people have to get elected in. Challenge them to
Yeah.
start understanding the importance of becoming educated on the impacts of the community, recognizing that climate and environment is not just about pollution, but it's a whole composite of things that you have to take into consideration in order to advance your community. Dr. Whitehead, I'm telling you, I think that this is a powerful podcast that is going to bring a lot of attention. I'm going to be sending it out to everybody that I know, on top of everybody that I know, because I think that we need to educate people from top to bottom. And I'm going to reach out to some people in Memphis and be like, do you have someone that is talking about environmental justice? When you're talking about creating all these different things, it's vital, it's important, and your voice truly is being heard. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm gonna switch gears for a quick second and tell me, I ask all of my guests this: how do you resonate with the idea of authentically peculiar?
So I can say now that I have sat down and we've talked through this interview and love, love, love your amazing questions, but I mean, I wouldn't expect anything less from you. I can confidently say that I resonate in the work that I do that is not the most popular thing to talk about. It's not the most popular thing to do. It's not the most popular thing that people are, it's not sexy, I'll say that.
Okay,
The
okay.
environment is not a sexy thing to people to talk about, right?
Mm-hmm.
However, I resonate to it in that it is it is a passion and it's important and it impacts quality of life. And if I can be authentic in, what I do and my God-given gifts and be the
Yes.
epitome of what God designed me to be, there's nothing better than that, whether, it's a little different or a little indifferent, to
Mm-hmm.
people. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think that what I do and how I have really gone off of my passion that really chose me. I didn't chose it. It relates to your podcast and what you're doing, so significant, so important, all the different things, that you discuss and you talk about that is just relatable today and how it impacts us historically and, going forward in the future. It definitely resonates with what I do around this thing we call accomplishing what we call environmental justice, and me doing it in the way that I feel that I have done in my capacity and my God-given gifts and what I'll continue to 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 do, so that's how it resonates with me and what I do. And I'm honored and I'm humbled for you to have me here. And I thank you so much for what you do and what you're continuing to do, because your voice means a lot. So I thank you for that.
Thank you so very much. Now tell the audience how they can contact you, especially, and I need the leaders of cities to hear this. How can they
Yes.
contact you so that they can get on board and educate themselves and the community?
Okay, so a couple of things. So LS Whitehead Group, we are in the middle of our website. It will be done soon, and I'm going to send it to Marcia as well. But but you can find me on a few different spaces. You can find me on LinkedIn, LaToria Whitehead, PhD, MPH. I have a contact form, all one word, LaToria. I mean, not all one word, but just my name, LaToria Whitehead, PhD and PH. I have a contact form on there where you can put in your name, boom, 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 fill out the information. I have a contact form on Instagram. I'm under Dr. L. Whitehead, DRL Whitehead. Again, I have a form for people to fill out for whatever you need, whatever you want to talk about, things that education, whatever. We list everything that we do on there. And again, also on Facebook. You can contact me on there. Again, on there, I'm LaToria Whitehead, and there's a form on there as well. So there's a form in all those spaces of Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And Marcia has my email address. I take that as well. But the form directly comes to me too. And when the website is finished this month, we are going to send it to you. So, yeah.
Awesome. So I'm telling you all, go out, please like, subscribe to all of her pages on social media. She brings a wealth of knowledge about the environment, environmental justice and injustices. We need to be community aware. Everyone thinks about the global and the national levels. We need to be community aware in our own neighborhood. Again, Dr. Whitehead, I get to call her LaToria, but Dr. Whitehead, thank you so very much for your presence this morning. Thank you so much for even educating me even more about the data centers and the importance of not just limiting the idea of environment to pollution, but to all facets of who we are. I'm so excited about this episode. And until the next episode, remember, go out, like, share, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spotify channels, all those channels. But more importantly, I want you to remember, always, always live authentically peculiar for you. Take good care, and we'll see you at the next episode. Thank you for sharing time and space with us today on Authentically Peculiar with Marcia. Don't forget to like, comment, and share the podcast with everyone that you know. In addition, go out and support each of the guests and their own social platforms. Buy their products, leave them a comment. We'll see you on the next episode of Authentically Peculiar with Marcia.